A man live in Papa house, come die for me. Oh. I'm on a who I be, yeah. No nation more. Some people there for hospital, some people there for graveyard. Me I dey alive today, no be by power. Where people go and no succeed, when I go there I carry victory. Oh. Makoni Sherumaya. If you never mojuru maya, aga makono le garibe yo. No ni Sherumaya. Una don't see this kind God before.
I never see you. I never see you. Papa, you too much yo.
Una don't see this kind of big before.
I never see.
I never see.
I never see.
I never see.
Papa, you too much yo.
Brother, have you seen? Cause I never see you.
I never see.
I never see you.
I never see.
I never see.
Papa, you too much
I never see. Hallelujah, para Pagara Jehovah mo no de bubu. Agabe hallelujah, para Pagara Jehovah mo no de bubu. I never see this kind of God with a heart of gold. Me, I never see this kind of God with a merciful heart. Ione mere monu mapuriko ya nufu bienu sorum kene Jehovah. Una don't see this kind God before.
I never see you. I never see you. Papa, you too much yo.
Una funu go chukudie ubekachim.
I never see you.
I never see you.
I never see
I
you.
never see
Papa, you too much yo.
I have never seen anyone like you.
I never see you. I never see you. Papa, you too much yo.
Una don't see this kind God before.
I never see.
I never see.
I never see.
I never see.
Papa, you too much yo. I never see you. I never see you. Papa, you too much yo. I never see you. I never see you. Papa, you too much yo.
They want to do intercropping and use part of the produce from the intercropping as livestock feed to incorporate in their livestock feed. So they will likely want to adopt intercropping. Persistent soil erosion negatively influence the adoption of intercropping. A farmer that perceives soil erosion will not want to adopt, has a likelihood of not adopting intercropping because they are not sure. This is a practice that you put in much, and they want to go where they will put in lesser resources, and if they get something or not, that's fine by them. It's not really hard on them. Moving to cover crops as one of the conservation agricultural practices. Age positively. Now they tried second time, just like as you're aging, you're trying to get more, and have come to master this practice. And so they want to adopt the practice. Also, this practice is not labor demanding. So they will want to settle on that since they will not put in much labor, they are aging. Land size also positively influence adoption of cover crops. Which means that a farmer that has an increase, a 1 unit increase in land size, has the likelihood of 5 5% to adopt cover crops as compared to a farmer who does not have an increase in land size. This is because cover crops, a farmer that has an increase in land size is able to separate the farm in plots and is able to try other practices in sections of the farm and not the whole farm. So they have that, they have the propensity, they have the likelihood to be able to try other things on the farmland. Access to extension positively influence cover cropping. A farmer that has access to an extension advisor has 42% likelihood of adopting cover crops, cover cropping. These are cropping systems that are complex to manage. So a farmer that has a contact with an extension worker has a high likelihood of adopting it because they have had knowledge, there is that awareness, and they are able to swindle through these practices. Land ownership also positively influences the adoption of cover cropping at 5%. A farmer with an increase in a farmer who owns their land has a 35% likelihood of adopting cover cropping. They have the authority over the land. It's not, for example, a leased land that you have limitation on what practice you have to do on that land. Modern farm technique negatively influence the adoption of cover cropping. A farmer with a modern farm technique has a 32% less likelihood of adopting cover cropping. Cover cropping does not require modern farm technology per se. So they will want to direct these modern farm technologies to practices like intercropping, which are demanding as the modern farm technique. Land ownership also positively influences the adoption of cover cropping. A farmer with a 1 unit increase, in livestock has a 7%, 8% likelihood of adopting cover crops. It goes same because they want these crops to be, they need these crops on the other side that they can use for livestock ownership. They want to do rotational grazing. And so a farmer with livestock ownership who owns livestock during rotational grazing, it's feasible for them to jungle with cover crops, with crop rotation, when you have the grazing on the other plot, another side of the plot or paddock, this way you're planting another a different crop, and next time when you're going that way, just like that, because during grazing too, this livestock actually produces feces, which works as manure. Furthermore, access to extension negatively affected mulching at 5%. It could be probable that the farmers in this area that have encountered extension workers did not fully grasp the benefits of mulching and so could not apply it. Remember I said earlier that a farmer only perceives the satisfaction they will get from a practice before they go ahead to adopt that practice. So since they don't know the benefits of mulching, they don't find it necessary to adopt mulching. Soil fertility status negatively influence mulching at 5%. A farmer with a decrease in soil fertility has 43% less likelihood to adopt mulching. This is because mulching has different types of mulching. You have plastic mulch and so on. Now the farmer is experiencing soil fertility, but the farmer is not aware that if I maybe adopt mulching on this land, it will help to increase on the fertility of the soil because of their less contacts with extension workers, and so they don't adopt mulching, and also they are not able to well implement the mulching because of lack of awareness. Modern farm technique positively influence the adoption of mulching at 1%. This is because mulching also needs those techniques like I mentioned, we have plastic mulch. There is a manner in which you apply, and more of other farm, modern farm technology receives government subsidy have 64% likelihood to adopt mulching, because mulching actually also is resource demanding, depending on the kind of mulch you want to do, and it's time consuming also. Age of the farmer positively influence the adoption of zero tillage. As a farmer is growing old, they don't even have the energy to focus to do more of the on-farm activities, and so they want to go to zero tillage, which is the less labor demanding, very cheaper to manage. Distance from home to farm negatively affected the adoption of zero tillage, which means that farmers will not want to adopt zero tillage in farms that are far, because it's easy to manage. They want to keep it close to the house, that they can go there from time to time and be able to get the quicker benefits from it, to other practices that takes more time to benefit. Number of farms also positively influence the adoption of zero tillage. This is because most farmers, small-scale farmers, believe that tilling the soil actually is increasing soil fertility, or easing way for the crops to be able to penetrate, forgetting that when they are tilling, they are actually destroying the soil organic content and the soil texture and the microbes in the soil also. So they don't want to have, like if a farmer has 2 farms, they want to, okay, let me try zero tillage on this farm. Since I will not till, I can try my other crops here, and the other farms I do what I want to do there, that I'm sure of. Marital status negatively affected zero tillage. A farmer that is married is an increase in labor. And a farmer that is married and has children already, also the household labor increases, and they are able to supply labor for the farm. Modern farm technology negatively influence zero tillage. Of course, where gender was positively significant in influencing farms' income. If a female farmer has a propensity of having higher income than the male farmer, probably because they do more of the farm work and spend more time on the farm, managing the farm, and have more output, and they are able to have more marketable surplus, and thus more farm income. Farm experience also positively influence also positively influence farm income. A farmer that is already experienced knows how to well manage their farm, and so have increased output and are able to have more income. Land ownership positively influence farm income also, and adoption positively and strongly influence farm income. A farmer that adopts a conservation agricultural practice have an increased income of 500 francs more than a farmer that of 3,400 more than a farmer that did not adopt. And so we actually confirm those results using the average treatment effects on the treated, where generally the results show that a farmer that adopts a conservation agriculture has a 2.5 million annual income more than a farmer that doesn't adopt farm income. And we therefore conclude that environmental factors from our first objective, which was to assess farmer perception on climate variability, we conclude that environmental factors are significant determinants of farmer perception on climate change and adaptation, and also that farmers in South and East regions of Cameroon use mainly mulching, minimum tillage, intercropping, and cover crops and crop rotations. We conclude also from the third objective that socioeconomic factors are strong determinants of farmer adoption decisions on conservation agriculture. And farmers who adopt a conservation agricultural practice earn more farm income as compared to farmers who do not. And generally, conservation agricultural practices significantly influences the smallholder farmer livelihood. We therefore recommend that policies such as providing subsidies, tax incentives, or other forms of financial support to farmers who adopt these practices should be enforced, And also, policies that are aimed at promoting the adoption of conservation agriculture should be designed considering socioeconomic factors and institutional factors to ensure accessibility and relevance to all farmers. Lastly, conservation agriculture should be promoted in areas where soil fertility is low, as these practices help to maintain soil moisture and nutrients. Overall, the area of further research, we recommend that there is a need of interdisciplinary research that integrates insights from agronomy, social sciences, and economics to develop effective policy interventions that promote sustainable agricultural practices while also addressing the needs and challenges faced by farmers in different contexts. I say a big thank you to my supervisor, Prof. Ernest Molwa, who has been there from the beginning of this journey till now. He has been supportive. Morally, he has been very encouraging. Christine Ayoku has been very instrumental, knocking at your door late nights, and he opened these doors for me. I say thank you so much. And to Dr. Dennis Sonwa in absentia, who has been very instrumental in this work, supportive, corrections, and advice academically and research-wise. I also say thank you to my HOD, Professor Kenda Roberts, for his mentoring and being the head, being the father of the department. I say thank you, Prof. To Dr. Njoma Raoult, to Dr. Reina Tabetando, to Dr. Veranjang, Dr. Aswa. And I want to say a very big thank you to someone who has been under the ground and has helped me a lot also in this work, just like a supervisor we do, Dr. Meliko Majori. And I want to thank Dr. Augusto Castro and Dr. Luis Lesher, who are my mentors, research mentors. They gave me the opportunity to be able to well experience multicultural research environments and are still doing that. I want to say a big thank you. I acknowledge the African Economic Research Consortium, who sponsored the data collection of this work, and the CLIPS Grants program under the Mitigate Plus programs of the CGM, that actually gave me the opportunity to have a multicultural research background that helped actually to brief this work. To the reviewers of my PhD thesis, the comments were wonderful and changed the work to the beauty it has now, and to the journal editors and reviewers, which are very helpful in improving the quality of the work. My data collection team, in absentia, they were very instrumental. To my sweet mom, she has been a sponsor of this work. I say thank you, Mother, for standing by me financially, morally, and everything wise. I say thank you to my dad. They have been there both morally and financially. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Ngaiwi. Mary, you have respected your time very well, which is a big honor for you. There are a few things that I really wanted to ask first, but from your presentation, I'll keep them at the end. Now, please, can you take a sip of water? Have you taken already?
I have done.
Okay. Now, we will move into the interaction with us. Please, and I want the panel members to know that this panel was actually designated to examine the thesis. It was not designated to come and praise the thesis. So we are going to examine you, and let nobody, we are examining the student, we are not examining any panel member. I want this very clear. So I will hand you over to your main examiner on my left. Prof?
Yes. Thank you, Professor, for giving me the floor. And if you might have to sit down to take notes, thank you for the presentation. I want to thank everybody in the hall present for coming, and particularly Professor Mulwa, who happened to have identified me to come for this examination of the PhD thesis. I want to thank the department for the approval and the university administration. I see my colleague, Redeem, is seated right here. I want to say thank you. And I know when I stand there, I thank the senior administrators in hierarchy. Thank you so much. Ms. Mary, like you said, we just examining what we report on the quality. It's not a confrontation. So I know I have sent an evaluation report before, and I happen not to have had this new one, so I don't know what is in this new one. So the first thing I looked at, but I did not bother to react, is the topic itself. The topic I cannot, it is like you embrace too much, and it's evident from your acknowledgement. The various people with different backgrounds, different influences, you try to embrace each of them, what they have to say in terms of contributing to this work. Very interesting, very pertinent and relevant, I say for practical purposes. And most of the time, we say that it is only God who produces a perfect work. So what we do is just trying to adjust to some level that we say is acceptable by us in any case. So the thesis we presented, I'm happy you try to explain, but even though to a little extent that I don't think that some of the questions I put before are still hanging in space, because I know you had every effort to do. Want to say conservation agriculture, climate change, and I've already removed the red cross because I don't see anything in the document that concerns the red cross. So I was like, what is it? But since we know there is no end to learning, I decided to say, okay, no, we authorize it, but knowing that we're going to adjust it. But I'm already happy now because the economic analysis of the red cross is already below, because in the document I did not see anything like that. So if I want to look at this, was voluminous, I think it's smaller now because it was about 300 something pages then. And I was looking at the fact that the language is moderate. I don't know whether it's English speaking or French speaking or British or American. The English was a problem. So at times you have to correct the English before you try to understand the content of what you are trying to drive home. You get my problem. And so I hope the English is up to date now after we through those corrections. And even the way you formulate your sentence, it comes like when you're speaking, you start a sentence and you expect somebody to finish for you. Or I should read meaning. You know that the Americans will say, they will start and then you just complete it because you are in the same game. And so I had that a little funny, and of course, I'm happy. I said, you go beyond the expectations because the objective you set out, you fulfill them, but you brought many other things into the game that we don't require. Because when you announce something in the beginning, you want to go through step by step to see if that's the one you achieve at the end. But I did not see that sequential flow. And that's why I asked for restructuring, especially in the results and discussion section. If I see that in the slide, you will be just talking one slide for one objective, but the document was not like that. Because right here, you did not verify any hypothesis. But in the document, there were hypotheses that you actually dedicate a section for hypothesis testing, and which I was now saying, oh, you are trying to verify this, meanwhile you have not yet given us the result before comparing or discussing with other ones. So, you just know the question, you don't need to answer. You just know the question so that at the end you're going to answer. And now ask what will be the contribution. What is your contribution to this work? After all this elaborate literature, what is new that the work has added? And I was wondering if there was a mistake, or synonymously, you were using smart agriculture or intelligent agriculture as conservation agriculture. Because I know conservation is just a tool. So I had that for that presentation. And I want to also look at the fact that in the work, maybe not what you have presented today, but in the work, you had a lot of theories presented. You've now put today, but what is still hanging is the relationship between the theories and your work. Because that's why I say you announce the theory, you elaborate model, you do this, but you don't tie it all together to what the work is all about. And that even brings out in the presentation where you just say the work is closer to this theory. Closer is not telling us what is the relationship to the theory. So you relate the theory to the work, how they tie together to solve what you want to solve. And you want to see that I said the research questions of which you presented, there are four research questions, but there are 3 hypotheses as a of study. But now that you did not present the verification hypothesis, I hope the readjustment taking place that the hypotheses are verified where the objective to it, the results are presented. It's not at the end of the chapter that you go back to it. The clarification of concepts or issues, well done. But they want to look at the fact that sometimes you will be looking at emergence of conservation agriculture, although agriculture, you look at climate change mitigation and adaptation, which we think will always lead to the reduction of emissions from deforestation and degradation. And when you present, I ask the question, what is the relationship between food security and agroforestry? You will also want to look at the fact that with the elaborate literature that you gave, like I said, I'm very impressed, 44 pages just for literature review, it becomes pertinent for somebody to now say, if this is primary data she collected, primary sources of data that she collected, then you actually getting on hand the problem. You are trying to identify the problem where it is supposed to be identified. Like before now, the Cameroon government used to have these scientists, these people in the corridor of power, in the offices in Yaoundé, they will sit and formulate policies for the farmers. But now that you go to the field, you did not go to the field to identify the problem. You want to see what they are doing with what you already have in mind. I'm not asking if they actually give you the opportunity. What policy approach are you going to advise non-governmental organizations to formulate such that the farmers' problems, their needs, their circumstances, just like the farmer and the environment as a complex web is taken into consideration. The farmer, the farm, and the environment taken as a complex web, taken into consideration in formulating a policy. Because we are looking at conservation agriculture. I found, today maybe I found it, I did not open the book, but there was something you talk about. So if that is the key for improved livelihood, which you are driving, because for an outcome, whatever you've been coming through so long, you want to see that the farmer, that smallholder farmer you're talking about, will have an improved way of living. And I ask, if that is the situation, what are the characteristics, what are the determinants, which you say, well now I have questions in terms of what you presented, because if we are looking at the socio-economic characteristics, you did not also look at the farm characteristics, did you? If you did, mean that you mix them up and call them socio-economic characteristics. Because I will not take soil fertility as a socio-economic characteristic. I will not take, yes, you bear with me. So you see that you mix it up. So it's difficult to select, and because those are the key things that are supposed to help us, me inclusive, take a decision whether I should go for this particular conservation practice, whether it's agroforestry, it's mulching, it's cover cropping, or whatever of those 5 that you have mentioned. Because they are the things, because when you talk about determinants, not just determinants, it means you're englobing a lot of things together. And so you have to distinguish what is giving them the way as a person, and what is giving them the way as the environment entails. They say You can have natural constraints, economic constraints, and social constraints. But now you group them all in one and call them socio-economic determinants. That's, I don't know how you're going to separate it, but it's very, very important, because for somebody to take a decision is worth the trouble. And I find conspicuously absent, and I still ask the question, why did you not take marital status into consideration? You talk about the number of people in the household, but you forgot or you refuse to. Because if I think my report will give it to you. So from the report, if it's not there, it means you refuse to. So you have a reason explanation for that. And we want to see that, just starting this by those who you surveyed, you have some being significant and some not being significant, but you specifically talk about their significant effect on farm income. But the one thing I fail to grasp is what is it they are growing on their farms. Because we know that cash crops, according to such, is predominantly for men and food crop for women. And women usually farm for household feeding. And at times, when you talk about the women being always on the farm, providing labor, managing, is it their crops or our crops or the man's crop? You see, gender perspective, because I asked you, why was there an inclusion of gender in this study? Because all of a sudden, that's why I say embrace too much. All of a sudden, you took from somewhere and you put. So I now ask from that perspective, whose crops are they? Because the income you're talking is, you talk about the income of the woman. You need to talk about the income of the household for having embrace. And what was even more tricky was food trees and all the rest, and it was negatively observed. I said there's a logical explanation, and you did not explain it, because at times you take the most important and the least important, and that catch my attention so much, because land ownership is the key for you to make a decision without asking for help. I know when a grandmother is cultivating uncles or grandfather, she will nurse things on the farm, do everything. Its need is like her own. But when you give it for it, and though the man will maximize, you want to go to near exhaustion of fertility. Food security. But I'm looking at food, improved nutrition. Because food security means what? Access, availability, stability, and utilization. And in this four aspect, I don't see it being considered in this study. So instead of talking about food security, it is the improved, because when there's diversity, we'll be looking at how it can help improve on the nutrition status of the household. And of course, we saw that in that area, most of them feed more on starchy food, which usually make their diets unbalanced. And so this particular aspect, if it's well handled and getting consideration, then they will have diversity to their already starchy based food meals. And they find that most of the time, the tables or the figures that you present, I just say they are not well done. That's what I said, but I don't know what is it now, because we know in scientific writing, the table heading should be on top and the title below, and that the source is below the figure or the table, not alongside, because you are reading something non-stop consecutively. And of course, I raised the attention, maybe I did not see here, the main question of the research was not in the document. And so I said that it is important to show consistency when it comes to research questions and objectives. And of course, we want to say that the main questions usually go the ones match the way they are. So in addition to the need to explicitly read the theories that you have presented to the application or to this study, you need to indicate at every level how it is being used. Maybe that's the way I say relationship, relate. And I said that is just grammar. Monotonous or monotony in the way or the language used in writing. Okay. And of course, I said if the work is given to you, if these members of jury are present, say that, okay, it has been accepted, you're going to be a doctor in conservation, agriculture, climate change, livelihood security, environment. Okay, tell us, reformulating with yourself now, what would the new topic be?
Okay. I hope you took down all the questions, because there are some that are also tickling my mind. So if you did not take them down, you will answer them. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Prof, for the wonderful comments. Yes, your comments, I took them seriously when I was doing the revision of this work, and you could testify that the work has gone down. And what is new that this study adds is the context-specific aspect of drivers of farm, mode of conservation, agriculture adoption. Because a lot of studies have already been done in this slide that have considered aspects like you said, useful security, which I have to reformulate. They have taken the aspect of food security, also sustainable land use, sustainable environment, but most of the studies don't really go further to look at maybe regional specific drivers. So we carried this work in some 2 regions in Cameroon, which we believe that this study will contribute in policy formulation to agriculture, to small-scale agriculture, in the sense that governments, this study, of course, part has gone out already, and it is still, there is still more to go out, and so this will contribute to what to consider, what particular factors to consider when formulating policies that are to improve adoption of farm practices, looking at context-specific or regional aspects too.
That is always, this big thesis is talking about determinants, because when we talk about the contribution in the act of what new are we bringing to the table, because of the, it doesn't determine a lot of work has been done. What is it new that this work has now brought to add to the existing literature?
The work adds to existing literature by bringing in the gender aspects, like you mentioned earlier, looking at the I didn't present that, but gender, part of the work we did, gender differentials in household decisions, how also they influence adoption, which I could not bring that because I had to use the variable gender, which also which then contributes that when factors like gender should be considered when policies are formulated, or when probably they have to do subsidizing incentives. They should consider the gender aspect, especially in these smallholder farmer households. And also, in areas where you have livestock farming, it will contribute to the kind of practices that extension workers can actually scale. And in a nutshell, this study states practices that can be scaled in this area of study, and areas that are similar in climatic similarities, and also
The outcome of this topic is your work. You are not telling me procedure because the work has already been done. You only telling me the realization of this topic. That's why I took the decision that you have to reformulate it. That's what is supposed to drive home. Because you don't take a topic in the blues. You have a roadmap and you know what is at the end. That's that end that I'm asking. It is that end that I'm asking. I'm not here. I'm not in the middle. You ran the race from the beginning and you are about crossing. They say you're crossing to go to where? Tell us.
so the work contributes actually to literature, which states that like conservation agriculture actually contributes to farmer livelihoods and thus should be considered on theories that do not relate to the work, which we responded to that. Okay, the next was about conservation agriculture, if it's a tool or we're talking of climate smart.
So I said conservation agriculture is a tool of climate agriculture, and you believe that simultaneously we are what I'm talking. What is it we are talking about conservation agriculture in this context?
Conservation agriculture in this context are those practices that are based under the three principles: no or minimum soil tillage, for example, zero tillage. We have crop diversification, like crop rotations, and we also have permanent soil mulch cover, like mulching. But when we talk now of climate smart agriculture, it's broader. All the other practices that actually are climate smart, that will ensure for environmental sustainability, that will improve farm resilience to climate change and all that, which means that they are both, most of the climate smart are both mitigative and adaptation. Conservation agriculture is both mitigation and adaptation, but it's more of soil conservation and soil organic matter improvement. We advise governments, NGOs to formulate resource problems considering farmers, farm, and the complex environment.
I actually said policy approach, not policy approach.
I'll advise these bodies to adopt an integrated policy approach where they bring in social factors, they consider social factors, they consider cultural factors, they consider environmental factors, and also relational values.
How do they consider these factors? Because I said the farmer, and the environment.
Yes.
And since we are out to improve their livelihood by trying to make sure that their needs and their circumstances are identified before we give a solution. That's why I say policy approach. I don't know if you learned about the farming system research approach. What is it all about?
It's an approach that incorporates the farm, the farm characteristics, the farmer, and the environment, the interaction.
What does it say? What does farming system say?
Oh. That these three should be.
The farming system say whatever the farmer is doing, first of all, his personal characteristics and whatever is obtainable in his environment. And by so doing, for you to get maybe advancement in production as a result of either new varieties or you call them technology, different production techniques, it's the interaction of all these that will come together before the farmer can And they said it's going to identify the farmer's needs where he is. We were not going to stay in Yaoundé and say this is what is happening in BUEA. No. We are on the farmer's field. We know who he is. We know what is obtainable, like you say, farm characteristics. We know in the environment whether there are financial institutions to give credit or there's a market. Those are the other economic factors that you say you need to consider. How long have you been practicing what is what you study?
Control, okay. Please stand this way.
We did actually an ex-ante impact assessment, which means that we just considered what they are practicing. We did not consider the how long. We did not do an analysis of.
No, I just want to know because somebody who started only yesterday will not respond the same thing as somebody who have done it 2 years or somebody who have done it. You have a baseline that you must have been practicing this particular one for at least.
Yes.
What was the time period?
How we constructed the adoption variable? We had a series of practices, 14 practices, and now we constructed an index from that. So for you to be considered an adopter, you should be using from 5 and above. So that's how we constructed that index.
Is it mentioned in the document?
Let me just come in because I had the question. That's what were the inclusion criteria in your survey?
The inclusion criteria was a farmer who is actively participating in agriculture, in farming in that village.
So if you go, you meet somebody who has just acquired a farm yesterday, he has never done agriculture before, you will consider that person the same like somebody who has been farming for 20 years?
No problem. What we did was we actually had some meetings with the chiefs of that village and some stakeholders. And so they could help us in identifying the farmers of their villages that were active farmers. That is why we even had 351 instead of 400 that we previewed. Because when we got to the East region, most of the villages, there were farmers who were actually farming, but they were not those active farmers that have been farming in the village. So the population dropped now in those villages. We have now we could sample just 15 households per village after those meetings.
I think you need to specify what were the inclusion criteria.
Okay.
Were there farmers who have been practicing agriculture for 10, 15 years or what? Because it's lacking. Even this thing of saying that you talk to chiefs and things of the sort. Because I asked in the area of questionnaire, did you not work with the extension agent of that area? Or how did you assess the farmers directly without having hesitant? It's not in the document.
Thank you. Yeah.
Are the questions finished?
You asked what the farmers do on their farms. We had the most crops that the farmers grow. You have cassava. They do less of cash crops in that area. Just very few farmers were involved in cocoa farming. So most of the crops that they grow there is cassava. They have egusi. They have banana. They have plantain. Those are the major.
So the relationship, the negative relationship between land ownership and agroforestry, land ownership and intercropping, even though it was not illegal. What can you explain? You said land ownership, maybe you did not say land ownership has a negative relationship with agroforestry and intercropping.
Yes.
So how come somebody who owns his own land is not able to plant banana egusi cocoyam at the same time, or plant plums, agroforestry species on his own land?
Okay. What happens in that area is that most of those who actually had their land and they had those like plum, as you said, they already met that tree there. For farmers that plant, that want to actually practice the agroforestry, they didn't actually find it from observations now in the field. They did not want to do that, and some will explain that these trees will take their cropland. And they'll even tell you that some said they actually even tried cocoa, maybe cocoa farming, and could not succeed because they didn't know how well to manage this crop.
Then agroforestry species refer to cocoa?
No, I'm just giving an example.
No, because it's very pertinent, because land ownership is like the key. You can kill somebody for your land. And because you have land ownership, it means you have the right to do whatever you like with your land.
Yes, Prof.
The fact that you say that for example, plum tree already existed, it means that the person is doing agroforestry, because why did you not cut it down? You're not going to ask him, are you the one who planted it? But the fact that it existed in the farm. So I'm still wondering a logical explanation for why that negative relationship. Because I was just looking at, I don't know the area, it's only you went to the field. Why do you think there's a negative?
Yes, but most of them even still fell down. They fell down the tree. The number of farmers that are practicing actually the agroforestry are very few, because some even that meet these crops on their farm, they fell it down. They will tell you that they need more space for their food crops. So they don't even see the need leaving the tree there.
What about intercropping? If agroforestry is negative because it's occupying land, what about the intercropping?
Maybe there are other factors that are interacting, resulting to that we could not really measure.
The questions are finished. Mr. President.
Okay, thank you very much, Rob. I'll hand you over now. Prof. BUEA on my right. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson, the Chairman, for giving me this opportunity to examine the candidate. Please, there are two things that I will be doing. I will give you some key questions, and I will also ask you some key questions too as well. But I want to, first of all, praise the work that you have done here. It is actually well presented. It is excellent. The way you explain the results, it was also marvelous. And the topic, you have actually changed that to the words. Actually, I was actually expecting to reply, because you know, it's a lot of work. So at the moment, it makes the work move somehow smoothly. Even when it was coming today, I was still worried about the topic, because even what you said in the corrected version, it was not yet what it was supposed to be, because there were two topics in one, and so I was really wondering. Let me first of all start with the acknowledgement page, because it's the first statement that you made here in your first statement. I have accumulated a great deal of practical and intellectual debts. And they say, my greatest debt is to my supervisor. Well, so that said, I moved straight away now to the abstract. I saw there were so many nice results, statistical results that you presented here, but the abstract is empty. We do not see results here, statistical results, to actually support the claims that you make in this particular abstract that you present here. And then again, you see that the topic was actually long. You had a lot of objectives, about 4 of them. For a short abstract like this, it was not actually evident. So there's one thing that I was even about to tell you before I start commenting on this work here. You were supposed to have double record the manuscript format or method of thesis writing, whereby each of the objectives is a chapter of the thesis. so as to make the work actually move fluently. The way it is, it doesn't flow. Because you have to read here, you see methodology, you have to go now to see the result elsewhere. It makes the work not actually flow well. Let's look at chapter 1. Chapter 1, the first paragraph, the last one line. Did you see that very well? You talk about both globally and in the developing countries. Both globally. Where is the globally? Are developing countries not included? Okay, so that's a critical statement. And then the other statements, you wrote them carefully, but there's a problem here, being that the ideas that you wrote therefrom, they did not actually fit in a harmonious manner to give the introduction the beauty that it actually deserves. Because all of the ideas are there, everything is there, but the problem is that they are not well arranged in a systematic manner. So I think that maybe with time you look at that and then you try to restructure it. I don't know how you come out now with the same of the problem, well, what's it there? And then now we had the research questions. The research questions, we look at the first one. It has to do with exposure. The second question has to do with adaptive mechanics. H03, conservation agriculture have no effect on smallholder farmers' livelihood security. Do you know that in this thesis, except what I stated, I did not actually see exactly where you address the concept of livelihood security. What is livelihood security? Is it so much welfare? Because I saw you talk about welfare in this case here. You didn't talk about livelihood security. So I would also see what is livelihood security? What are the parameters that we use to measure livelihood security? In other words, how do you measure livelihood security in this case here? Because when you look at even the literature review section, you will see that this concept is totally absent. And then again, when you look at this particular objective, the objective that relates to this particular terminology, you find out that in their methodology, there was not actually, there were no parameters that were actually addressing livelihood security. Instead, you were talking about welfare, 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 and even the concept of livelihood, which is also part of your topic. It was actually there, which was actually a very important keyword. It was not actually well examined, although the conceptual framework that you conceived, sometime when you come back to that point, it had to take care of that. And then again, when you write, you just write, it is too long. And then when you write like this without subtopics, it is really long and it is boring. It doesn't actually help the examiner to really understand what you are doing. And then you see, at times you talk about the concept, you jump to another concept, we do not know exactly what's going on. If you had subtopics, it would have made the work really beautiful.
Yeah, let me just drive that because I don't want to come to it again. Even in this corrected copy, that's exactly what it said. At times, it becomes a rigmarole. Before you realize you are already sleeping, you have already lost, yeah. You have to go about 5 pages behind to go and see the topic. And then you bring irrelevant things in between that they lull you to sleep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is not just to make the work voluminous, but to put in what is essential that can make the scientists know the work and they're happy with the work. Happiness is not equal to failure. It can just be 3 pages, but you can still have excellent. Now, when you talk about the climate, you see there was a case of the difference between climate change and climate variability. They were not really well defined here. So I do not really know, because I don't know when I read the document, what is climate change? What is climate change variability? And then again now, you see here, we cannot talk about climate. There's one other question that I had to ask here, just page 24. Talk about the impact of climate change on livelihood security. There's a problem here. I first asked myself, what's a livelihood? Because it was not there. I did not see what a livelihood was all about here. The school's definition that you know, that there are so many years as possible, I didn't see it here. And then when do we say that livelihood is secured? What's the livelihood? When do we say that livelihood is secured? This is important for the constitutional framework, which I'm still going to address at the end. Yes. We're talking about smallholder farmers. Vulnerability analysis, for example. We talk about vulnerability to climate change. As a scientific work, it was also very necessary that you let readers understand exactly how climate change vulnerability is measured. Even if you were not, if that is a concept that was not used, you were supposed to actually come up with a model that defines climate change vulnerability, and you will see exactly the key indicators of climate change vulnerability. That's the exposure, the adaptive capacity, and then what we call sensitivity. Of course, that's a function of a function, because actually we talk about adaptive capacity. How do you measure it? Sensitivity, how do you measure it? And the others. So it's a function of a function. It was also broken down. So those are things that you could even elaborate on, because it's a document that you can consult, even in the long run. Yes, we know about the impact. Are there any impact? So now, I move to the next step here. I think I want to be a bit faster so the president can speak, so that most of the jury. Now, you talk about the Cobb-Douglas. In the theoretical framework, please, are you with me?
Yes.
The Cobb-Douglas equations that you wrote here, they are very strange. You do not actually resemble what I know. I think you see that. It's the same thing with most of your models. You don't write your models well. When you just multiply everything, like what I see here, you just multiply. When the coefficient was written there, you change the whole thing. This is a scientific document. And somebody can quote you and use this thing in a different work and then come up with terrible results. So it is good to always make sure that you look at a model and then you write it carefully. It is not well written. And then the variables that are found in the model are supposed to be well defined. The variables are supposed to be well defined. This is what you have not done here. And then there's the same thing too with the model that you had here on the decision theory. The model is poorly written. It is poorly written. You have to read well. I'm sure you write. If you cannot write it very well using mark type, you make sure that you look for somebody who can do that for yourself. This is an important document. It is not a child's play. I'm very happy with page 70, especially when you try to explain this concept of the utility theory. It was the utility maximization theory. I think I questioned this one in my review, and then also asked you, how did you apply this to your work? It is, you did the review very well, because there's also a kind of justification why you have to apply the theory. This is exactly what we want when it comes to literature review. It is not just copy-paste, but then you must be able to explain exactly, justify it. And at that time, it's an evaluation of existing work. It's an evaluation. And therefore, when you evaluate, I want you to even use a particular concept to make sure that you justify it as well. And then I gradually move now to page 96. The model, the conceptual framework that you develop here. It is here that but I am saying something on the assets. The livelihood assets. You came out with the Pentagon as proposed by Scones, but I thought that at the center of this, you would have been having the smallholder farmers. And then at the top, you should not, the livelihood assets could have been listed there, all the 5 assets, you list them there, and then you see the relationship that exists now between those assets and then the small farmer holders, the smallholder farmers. They're supposed to be at the middle here. But then, you kind of maybe try to just adapt something without putting it in a very nice way. And then there could have been some arrows to show the relationship, how they interact. How they interact. Yes, this needs real revision. It should not be at the center, it should not be, because what you are targeting the smallholder farmers. And so we should be looking at that at the center here. You don't have to draw this pattern one again. It doesn't play in the role here again. Just list them. The assets should be up here, where you write there, livelihood assets. Just write them there. Financial, another line. With IE, we look upper. Is it true or false? Use IE or use upper? You look at intake citation, there are some cases like this, a lot of them too that I saw here, because you're just supposed to write the name of the author, and then you write the date. Or with the upper system, the 7th edition, where there are 3 authors, first, then they are. That is how I have learned it to look like. I didn't like the way you did the description, because when you describe it, the geographic coordinates were supposed to be stated, and then you talk about the boundaries to the east, to the west. And then again, when you state fig 3.1, I should see the figure. What I saw is that you made a very good publication with a very good journal, Elsevier. I attended a certain training at Beijing with some of the authors of Elsevier. You know, it's not easy to publish here, but you did. That's a plus. Elsevier, their role, it is well stated. As soon as a figure, a table is announced, you present it. You should not cause the right to start suffering. Once you announce a figure, just present it. I like the way you announce. I mean, the way you did announce it, but they don't like when you present the table. That is it. And then again, there would have been some topics here where you talk about the climate. You talk in that climate, then you talk about temperature, you talk about rainfall, even humidity. All of those things, they have an impact on agriculture. The performance of the crops. Even wind. I have my farm at Linge in the Mongo division. You were talking about my corn was, almost all the corn was brought down. I'm experiencing climate change, the impacts. I'm seeing them. I'm seeing what's happening to my crops in the farm. That's true. And that's why most of what you're talking about here, we're just looking at them and smiling. Because it's a practice that also have down there too as well. I think you see that. But this work, you have to make sure that we see the trend, how temperatures, how rainfall, how humidity, how wind, and other factors that determine agricultural yield, how they are in this particular document. So that when we read, we look at it and say, no, but this is true. You see, like the results now could have been justified from this kind of things like that. Something like what the pro was asking. Why is something like this? By looking at this information at the background, you can do it to answer the question. That is why the background is not here. The background of the study area. Even the economic activities of the area, you didn't talk about that. The research design, you wrote it, but there was no reference. It is like, it is your work. You can't talk about quantitative and the quantitative approaches without citing a reference. It is not done. And then now, I'm really wondering, when I see page 105, why did you have to be talking about confidence level? What's confidence level? Why do you even care to talk about confidence level here? What's the role? Just to maybe, it is irrelevant to the text. And then again, you see the normal equation, you don't write the word. The normal probability density function. You didn't write it very well. You see that? It is not well written. And then you talk about degree of variability, these things are irrelevant. They are not important here. But you talk about the model and the CORAG approach to calculate sample size, that was necessary. A positive point I also had here is the way that you distributed the farmers, the sampling and all like, it was quite interesting. See, a blow air and also wool. I think you see that there. Yes, it's very important. So now, if you talk about, did you use questionnaires to carry to maybe collect data from the field as a tool?
Yes, please.
But I do not see that. Would have made reference to the question in the text. Because I'm turning this page here, I've gone to the, I'm seeing an nexus, I'm not seeing a problem with the questionnaire. You should make reference to your questionnaire, or if you didn't do that, what were the variables? I saw you talk about multi-number login and not lie. I don't want to assume nothing, but then I was wondering, how were the variables actually quantified? How were they measured? I think you see that. Because to use a particular model, I must see the model, and then again I must see the variables. Do these variables qualify for this kind of statistic that you are applying? I think you see that. It was good for us to see that there would have been a section of pure rationalization of the variables where you can come out now with a brief summary of that one day. So for the thesis, I said use the manuscript format. Anyway, with your supervisors, you can use that. You can use the manuscript format because all of these objectives, all what you've done, they are publishable. They're publishable. So if you adopt now the manuscript format, where each objective is a chapter, you start with the introduction, use the IMRAD approach, you will find it very easy to publish. And that will be great. The multiple component analysis. And then somewhere else I see here analysis. So where two kinds of components are extracted for monitoring. Firstly, it applies PCA transformation to obtain the principal component. Can you throw more light on this? What do you say by multiple component analysis? And how is it different from principal component analysis?
For principal component analysis, you can easily apply with variables that are categorical. But
what are categorical variables?
you can easily apply with continuous variables. Like, for example, if you want to compute an index of variables that have binary.
Excuse me, please. Because even the categorical variables, there are some that you can use categorical level variables when it comes to user component analysis. But it depends on the type. Is it nominal or vanilla? Which one did you use? Use nominal now because you see your fields. Your fields. How can you use nominal level variables? We are completing your PC. Maybe your problem model. You may apply that there. That is the case of the dependent variable. We say adopters of CA, not adopters of CA.
No.
No, I'm saying that for PCA, you can use other level variables as independent variables. You run the model. But now your dependent variable, like you said, could be discrete or continuous. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but we're talking about nominal level variables. You can't apply them here. I will seek to come to that somewhere that is not get to us for. So, there are many things here which I've written. I will give you this document by the time you acquire. Page 126. I asked for this, and this is very, very important. A recapitulation of the methodology that you applied in your work and then the justification. It was actually very important. When you have objective number 2, identify farm practices used in this area. When you have the measurement scale, you use that nominal. Are you seeing that? Page 126.
No, on this new document it's page 120.
Okay, page 120 of the document. Page 120 of the document. And then you say measurement scale, the scale of measurement of the variable, you wrote them nominal. And then I look at the next one, type of analysis. You talk about descriptive statistics. Well, it is okay for that one. Multiple component analysis. Then you do multiple component analysis with nominal level variables. How can you do it? You may use, but we do not even see how you use it. Well, but yeah, that's because I saw graphs. I saw graphs here. So you can apply that one there. But then you can only apply nominal level variables. In the case, you want to use what you call the parametric statistics. In the case we talk about the property model here, or the multi-normal log it, that's in the case where perhaps the dependent variable Yeah, in that case, because the dependent variable could either be nominal or ordinal. I think you see that?
Yes.
So in that case, we can apply nominal variables there. Yes, in that case, you act like a dependent variable. Like now, talk about, now, this is happening like this. Are you an adopter of conservation agriculture? 1, that's yes. No, that is 0. That's a dependent variable. And then you want to see now exactly whether the adopters, whether their performance could be better, or what explains adoption, and then also what does not also explain non-adoption. You can use that one day, and you can move on to half a minute, I think. The president has already put the right to end, but let me just finish this one here, please. When you come to presentation of results, it is always necessary that you come up with a statement, a brief introduction, and then you tell readers. You should know exactly how you are going to present results. In section this, I'm going to present results for objective about this. In section this, will be like this. That is how you are supposed to do it. You must make reference to that. So now, let me go to the last part of the question here. I saw here on page 34, 4.15. What's the meaning of this? And what does it say about the model? What does it mean? What does it say about the model? R space is 0.0326. Did you see that?
Yes,
Okay, want to answer the question at the end?
It's on page 175.
Yes.
New document.
What does it mean? And then again, what does it tell you about the model that you have developed in this case here? So, with that, Mr. President, I want to appreciate also the way the candidate also did the referencing. I have not seen any reference that was fully cited. It is up. The candidate also used a lot of scientific documents, published, work that have been published recently and in well-renowned scientific papers. But there's one thing that I want to ask you here, which you must understand. Because the work that you have done in the eastern part of Cameroon, the south, they have almost the same climatic zone. That kind of work, maybe the results that could not be applied in the savanna areas. And also, when you look at the background you are studying, in Cameroon, that had worked on this particular topic. Because we have seen in your discussion to see whether there was a kind of difference in your discussion. Do your results agree with those of the people who work in that particular part of the country so that you can generalize the results in all over our country? So these are the kind of things that we would love to see when you did a discussion. So just briefly answer the questions. I don't want to be worried so much. Yes, first up, let's start with the last one. But what is R squared? What does it stand for?
It tells if the model. It depends if the model is statistically significant, if the model fits.
Does it fit in this case?
Yes.
It does fit. We just 3.6% of the independent variable. Explain the independent variable. Explaining it, and then you said it's
3 out of 100 people. 3.
So you see, okay. Just now quickly answer the question. Mr. President, please. Give back the phone. Thank you very much.
Yeah, there is one question that you have not answered. What's the difference between livelihood and welfare?
Livelihood.
How do you measure assess them?
Okay, I use the livelihood actually is farmers' activities. That is the farmers, what they do to improve, either what they do in quest of trying to improve on their standards of living.
Try their best. I think we're going to move pretty fast now because very soon we'll get to the praise singing chorus. But let me hand you over to your head of department, who is also an agricultural economist. Then after that, your supervisors will come in. Maybe we'll start clapping when they come in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the floor. This is a big day for the department.
You see, the crisis have started.
Because this is the first woman who is defended the PhD in the department. So we are very happy for today to have here all the professors who come to give this great and celebrate it. I want to thank all the members of the jury, started with Professor Dorothy, who come from CHAM, who take time to evaluate these cases. I also want to thank Professor Ngu, with all the wonderful work that you've done to evaluate the cases. My thanks also go to Professor Molwa, who started this department. I'm also happy to follow the work that he started. Thank you so much for the president of the jury, Professor Tanefo. Thank you, Justine, to be the supervisor of this work. I would like also thank the faculty, the dean, and ask for the candidate to take into consideration all the comments that the two examiners try to raise from this work. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Okay, first chorus of praising. Okay. Let's move to the supervisor, Prophet Molwa.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chair of the jury. Like the head of the department has presented, we have come a long way. This is the second candidate in the Department of Agricultural Economics and Agribusiness, which started in 2010. This is the second candidate in defending the PhD. It has been a very long journey, PhD. So I think it's an opportunity for her to be able to present to the community what she has done. But like I've always told students, my students, I've told them that the training I got in Europe is that it is your work. In the European system, on that day of the exam, even your professor asks a question as if he does not know you. It is here that we find professors who are trying to defend students as if they were also in the laboratory, as if it's a joint piece of research. It's your work. It's a work not because we want to torture you, but because we are sending you now to the outside world, where you are going to defend yourself. And when you be defending yourself, we shall not be there. The candidate in front of us has made a lot of progress. Her strength has been her determination. Her strength has been her determination. I'm a very honest and brutal person, and I say things up front. Those who scored all the A grades in all the courses do not even yet have a research proposal since 2016. The A students who perhaps I could have said misled us in the department with all the A grades don't even yet have a proposal. The B students or the average students have coupled with their determination, with their courage, with their openness and willingness to learn, have been able to push themselves, and Mary qualifies in that group of students. I'm a father, I'm a mentor, and I can present that. So I want to congratulate her for the strength and effort that she has put. And it is also for something for the younger students to be able to emulate. So it's a work. I don't know if the president of jury will allow me in 2 minutes to interact with the candidate to be able to prove to you sitting here that she's the one who undertook this work. Because there are a lot of things happening in our community. We know what's going on in our community. Someone will present a brilliant work, but may have subcontracted it outside. and come and present. So I hope it will not be strange for you to leave here and say that, why was the supervisor even asking the question? But before I forget, I can see the family.
Your rightful position.
Thank you so much.
Examine this.
I can see the family here, and from the way the parents, the mothers, the brothers and sisters were opening their eyes, it also means they're a family. And they were even enjoying the exchange. I'm sure when they leave here, they themselves will be able to ask her, how come they ask you about intercropping, agroforestry, and you said that this, where you have been seeing me in my farm. In other words, it's a topic that's contemporary, it's a topic that is relevant, which the Faculty of Agriculture and Veterinary Medicine, with the Dean, Professor Bondo, pushing that we should be able to do research which is relevant to the community. So if we have members of the community here that also have not been frightened by the science, but have heard a presentation which is similar to what they do back at home, I think it's a plus. So I want to find out from you, from the question that came before, what will you say again, repeat very clearly to us, is your contribution to science about this work? It needs to come out very clearly.
My contribution to science is contributing to more clarity on how governments, NGOs can integrate farm characteristics.
So the contribution to science of this work is that this is a candidate who is trying to bring two major concepts in climate change discourse together. She's bringing adaptation and she's bringing mitigation. The literature evolves on two strands, forgetting about the hard science of geography and and climatology, on climate change. But when you come to the applications, you have the literature on adaptation, coping strategies and adaptation. Then you have the other group of literature on mitigation. On mitigation, what can you actually do to reduce the effect of release of greenhouse gases and other associated gases into the atmosphere to destroy the environment? So her work is trying to bring both together, but although she has not been able to declare with that. And conservation agriculture, in its diverse work forms, bridges that gap between adaptation and mitigation. So therefore, in summary, the strength of this work and your contribution to science is that you've been able to show in smallholder farming systems how farmers try to bridge the gap between adaptation and mitigation in very clear language. Some of the techniques in conservation agriculture helps them to cope. Again, some of the techniques in mitigation, in conservation agriculture helps also in mitigation. You showed livestock, you showed mulching, you talked about erosion, and you talked about zero tillage and so on. Issue of climatic trends, which has also come up most often, even in the manuscripts that have been prepared from this work. You have that information, you have that data, but it's not coming out from your work, which is the first port of call to be able to show that in this study area, from the 30 years of climate, rainfall and temperature data which I have, and I've plotted them, these are the trends. So I think that if you are doing a correction of this work, please, that information must come out clearly. And the process in which university has put, in which candidates must publish an article before they defend, I think it's a good one. But candidates are using it as an independent, they think it's independent, but are not mutually exclusive. The comments you get when you try to publish your paper, immediately your paper gets accepted or you keep improving, revising and sending, you have to return back to the main document in your laptop, the thesis, to effect most of those corrections that you did in your manuscript. They are not two independent events. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor. At least, since there was no other pressing, let me hand you over to your co-supervisor.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. The main supervisor has said it all. It's not been an easy ride, but I'm happy that finally we are here today to present this work before this jury. And on my part, and I also think that the main supervisor shared the same concern, we feel comfortable that we did our best. But like any scientific document, there are always comments, there are always interactions which contribute significantly in improving the quality of the work. And as your co-supervisor, I have just two questions that I want you to respond to. And the first question is, this thesis is written, developed, and submitted to the Department of Agricultural Economics. And I want to find out from you, do you think this work equally makes significant contributions to the gender and climate change discourse, specifically in terms of the gender dynamics of climate change mitigation and adaptation? That would be my first question. Final stage of your PhD journey, but if you were asked to redo this work, what are those issues that you may want to consider that were not previously considered in this work? Are my questions clear?
I'll begin with the first question. The contribution of this work from Agricultural Economics Department to gender.
Do you believe that?
I do believe that, because from our results we could see how gender actually influences the adoption of some of these practices. For example, agroforestry, which tells that gender has a place in considering the household decision, household gender differentials in household decision making. How these interact and contribute to farming systems. So it actually contributes in that line, taking into consideration the gender from the household and to the farm. How does this interaction actually affect the farm? How does it affect the farmers themselves, the household itself?
So you're saying that your results actually points to the significance of a gender responsive approach to climate change action, which is, adopted globally, in terms of how we can better, deal with issues of climate change, in terms of mitigation and adaptation.
Yes.
Now on to the second question.
Okay. The study actually, what to consider next, we would like to expand to other regions with different ecological zones. That's the first. And also, from our result, we realized that financial instruments actually are a great influence also to adoption of these farm practices. But we cannot now measure the effectiveness. So if we are to do this work again, we would like to expand of financial instruments in adoption of.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ayu. We're finally progressing towards the end, but don't think that the question will continue. Let me just ask some few questions. When I look at the first, your cover page, your first degree is in CST biology. First degree is important.
Yes, bro.
Your PhD is in agricultural economics. At the end of the day, where do you belong?
Okay. Prof, I belong to, I'm driving towards environmental policy, agricultural policy. And of course, I had a background in curriculum studies and teaching biology, and this actually gave me the pedagogic aspect to be able to mingle into other areas of life. And botany actually, during this, my research was in tropical rainforest. And then I developed the drive towards, it was actually a drive towards forest policy, forest economics, to see how those policies actually interact, forest policy and agricultural policy.
Okay,
This farm.
please. Look at the fact, I've been able to defend it. But there's one thing, huh?
Yes, Prof.
All your degrees are from Rome. Also,
Yes, Prof.
and when you go to Rome, do what the Romans do.
Okay, Prof.
We have a thesis guide in this university, 120 pages. Have you ever read that document?
Yes, Prof.
There are certain areas in a PhD thesis that are not included in MSc thesis, but are supposed to be included in PhD or in MSc dissertation. The PhD thesis stated in that thesis guide are not here. Do you know them? Do you have your CV in this thesis?
No.
That's one of the things that you are supposed to have in this thesis. And then in that CV, it's your own document that you prepare. And then in that CV, you will then underline the article that were published before you put your publication. The next one, you don't know. Just to prove that you did not read the thesis guide. You are supposed to include an author's guide. Do you have it here?
No problem.
A second point to prove that you have not read that document. Third point, another thing that is lacking. You are supposed to have a subject guide.
I have 4 more than.
You are supposed to have 6. That's page 205. Yeah. For a strange reason, on this table I'm the only one who has read the corrected copy, because all the other people who were talking 205.
Such as providing subsidies, tax incentives, or other forms of financial support to farmers who adopt these practices.
Read the second one.
Policymakers could consider implementing policies such as providing subsidies, tax incentives, or other forms of financial support to farmers who adopt these practices.
The third one.
Policymakers could consider implementing policies.
Why are you laughing?
It's a typo error for 5.
6 recommendations, because it continues to the next page. 6.
I'm sorry about it.
This is the new version. So you see, at times when you do this work, it is good to read over again. If not, if you have some friends around, even ask them, yeah, to throw an eye on it, so that you can be able, because this is a major embarrassment. Let me ask you another question. Point 6.2. Identifying farm practices used in this area that fulfill principles of conservation agriculture. Then you said, the first sentence, CA practices used in the south and east were identified. And who identified them? Who identified them?
Me from the document I got. We identified these practices from the document we got from the delegation of the list of practices.
That is it stated anywhere in this document?
No
I ask you, yeah, it's not there. How did you identify these CA practices? Okay, it means the question you need to provide the answer in your methodology. Okay. There's something that one of the examiners said but did not actually say it well, but maybe the assumption is that it has been corrected in this final version, but that problem persists. When you are writing, when you come to your results, mention your tables and your figures. You start with the pros of the table and the figure before you bring the table and the figure. And you make sure you mention that table and the figure in that your pros before you come to it. Don't instead give a figure and then you are describing a pros about 1 or 2 pages ahead. So one has to be reading and coming back to come and look behind. It's so persistent in this new document. So that's a general comment. Let me ask you, can you go to your conclusions? You had a good slide as a conclusion. Let's go to it. It was in bullet form. Yeah. I think that's the one that you're clicking. Okay. The second column, read them. Okay.
Computations for conservation.
Are those the practices that you identified for conservation agriculture?
Yes, from using the multiple component analysis. We had the list of practices.
But these people in these areas have been farmers throughout their life.
Yes, Prof.
Were they not using these practices? If they were using them, were they adopting conservation agricultural practices?
The farmers, some of the farmers are using these practices, but not, they use them, but they don't well implement these practices to get broader benefits. Also, yes.
Do you see where I thought you should have had more information about the farming history of their participants? For how long they have been doing agriculture?
Yes, Prof.
Were they practicing these things at things of the sort before this particular time at things of the sort?
Yes, Prof.
Okay, to actually prove to you that I've read this work very well, go to page 129. I got it on Friday, but it was as if I should not read. But I read it, go to page 129. Do you have it?
Yes, Prof.
Okay. Table 4.1. Farm size distribution among farmers in the study area. You have east, you have south, and then you have aggregate. What does that aggregate mean?
It's a combination of the data.
Okay, take farm size 0.25 hectares to 2.5 hectares. What is supposed to be aggregate there? Yeah. So that table has a lot of problems. Has a lot of problems. Even if you look at the south, what is the total for the south?
The south is 200.
Is it? Is it 200?
Here is not bad, this is 200.
If you add 221, 62, 10, 7, it gives you 200?
No problem. It doesn't, Prof.
So why do you say it's 200?
No, I was just saying the actual size is 200, so here it's an error.
Of course, because of that error, whatever thing you have as your percentages are all wrong.
Yes, bro.
Yeah. And then, these are the things that you should have taken also to be basing your conclusion. See, yeah.
The difference is
0.5 missing in all the categories.
0.5%.
There's 0.25 missing.
0.25.
Yeah, because from 2.25, there's nothing else, then you see 2.5. After that, you see from 4.5 to 5, there's 0.5 missing there. You come and see 6.75 to 7, there's 0.25 missing. Some land sites are not included there, and they're supposed to be continuous. This will work the table.
Yes, it's an error.
Okay. When you take my own document, you realize there are few areas that I've actually emphasized in the way you report. The second examiner actually told you about the literature review. You have a lot of it, but the aspect of subtitle is lacking, and then they just pull you left and right, and you cannot collect anything. It's not everything that you see published that you copy. When you have those subtitles, they also help you to guide what you are supposed to put in that particular title. Look at your objectives. If you are trying to satisfy an objective, look at what is relevant for that objective and things of the sort. There is another thing that I want to tell you. Let me ask this one. Your work has an abstract. It has a summary. It has a conclusion. What's the difference between all those?
An abstract is actually the summary of the work. From
The summary, so the summary will be the abstract of the work.
In the abstract, you don't include the literature review. You just have objectives, the methodology, results, and the policy recommendations, the implication of the result and policy recommendation. But for the summary of the work, you actually summarize what you've done in that.
You summarize what you have done. Yes, but can you go and read your summary? Your summary is more of starting with literature review again. The first 2 pages of that summary are totally useless, because there's nothing there that you have done on those first. So I'll suggest that you follow the format of thesis writing, because if you go and look at your the thesis format in the University of BUEA has 5 chapters. Can you name them? Introduction.
We have
Literature review, which you have. Material and methods, which you have. Results.
and then
Results. Then you have discussion, conclusions, and recommendations. But because since you wanted to combine results and discussion at the same place, there's a lot of repetition. Every result that you present, you go back and you say, as mentioned earlier, and things of the sort. But if you have adopted that one where you have the one conclusion and things of the sort, those yeah. And I think it will actually clean this work very well. Yeah, it's there's a lot of information, but the organization, to me, yeah, it's poor. And then when you talk about your abstract, your summary, and your conclusion, what is your conclusion supposed to be?
conclusion, the conclusion actually tells what gives the conclusion actually comes from your question. You asked a question, you've answered it, and so what have you gotten from?
All the questions that he asked?
No, the main question.
Those questions lead you to what? Your objectives?
The objectives.
So I'll ask you to tie your conclusions with to your objectives.
In particular, please.
Yeah.
What is the key result? If somebody asks you at any time, what did you find from this research work? In the conclusion, you just tell the person. That's the key result. You have to go and say everything from all the data. That's what you should do.
Thank you very much. You can have a seat. Let's enter the Mumbai out place. The mountain will not move.
Let's go out there.
I never see this kind of love. I never see this kind of love. Merciful Lord. Don't see this kind of love. I never see. I never see. I never see, I never see, Papa, you too much. I have never seen anyone. I never see, I never see, Papa, you too much. I don't see this kind of before. I never see,
Duly constituted to examine your PhD thesis. I've read the document, listened to your presentation, consulted a very pertinent topic for practical purposes, and appropriate methodologies were used, and the results are good for policy formulation or reformulation. And therefore, the panel is recommending you through the department to the faculty at the university for the award of a degree Doctor of Philosophy in Agricultural Economics.
Congratulations, you're a glory of God. Congratulations, He has done it for you, and you will come back with a new song to sing. God is good. Yes, you will come again with a new song of praise. God is good. Oh, congratulations, congratulations, congratulations. Say what the Lord has done for you. Congratulations. God is good. Them say that I can never be all that I see. I've seen that God is greater than that.